Hi everybody, I'm just waiting for people to appear, show that some people are watching the live. We will be waiting again for 5 minutes before we are starting the live. Back in a second. Are you coming in here? Yeah. Hello, hello, welcome. Say hello in the chat if you're here. I see 2 people watching. We will be waiting for 5 minutes before starting so that more people can join the live if they want to join the live, and then we will start with the course. Hi Roxana, how are you? Doing okay? We're probably only gonna do about an hour today, or at most 1 hour and a half. But we will be doing another one tomorrow as well. So I wonder who else is there. Daniel, are you there? Or who else is there? Say hello in the chat if you can, and if you didn't already give a like, please give a like so that YouTube can push the content more, so that more people can see it. Hello, hello, I see another person joined. Welcome to the live. We will be starting soon with the course. So Julian says that he can't hear. Is this just a problem on his part, or? Can you guys let us know if everybody else is hearing the live? I'm wondering, anybody else? Can people hearing the live? I hope they can, because my audio says that it's working, so I'm not sure what's going on. Okay, so I guess, Julian, maybe it's a problem on your part. Maybe you have the YouTube tab on mute or something. Otherwise, the problem would be everywhere. Also, if you're new to the live and you didn't already give a like, I would appreciate one, so that YouTube can push this content more, so more people like you can see it. Any comments? Sorry, Julian, about not hearing. Maybe you can try another browser. See. Hi Naresh, welcome to the live. I think you're the first time when you're joining. By the way, these lives have been going we have been doing a few lives before. So we're basically somewhere during a course, so we have some back lives that you can watch at some point if you'd like. Also, if you didn't already give a like to the live, I would appreciate one, so that more people can see it. And also, if you didn't subscribe, if you subscribe, YouTube will show you when I'm doing new lives. Okay, so there's been 5 minutes, so I will be starting going through the course. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and do again the last thing. Thank you for joining. I hope you are going to be enjoying the live, and do make sure you ask any questions if something is unclear. Also, if you have some JavaScript question that is not related to the course that we're going through, you can ask it, and I'm going to make note of it and try to answer it at the end if it's within my capabilities. So yeah, I will be redoing the last thing we did in the last live, and then we will be going to the live, and I will keep an eye on the questions to make sure that I am answering any if any are put in the chat. Alright, so let's get started. Okay, so last time we were having an exercise, and the problem was to, okay, so let me check. Okay, so the problem that we had was to basically here is saying that a series of if and else ifs like this, if, else if, can be replaced with a switch, which makes it look more readable. So basically, instead of saying if val equal 1 answer, or else if val equals 2, you can use the val as the switch value, and then you're saying case 1, which means if val is 1, then do these things and break. If it's 2, then do these things and break, and so on. And then you have a default, which is basically the else at the end of an if-else chain, right? So in here they asked us to change the chain if-else-if statements into a switch statement. So we basically provided this one, and I'm going to make this bigger so we can see what's happening. Basically they give us this, and we have to change it into a switch. So I'm going to leave this here, and I'm going to change it into a switch. And the way we do that, we say switch, because we have learned the syntax of the switch, and we're saying switch value. So we're basically providing it the value to the switch, and then we're opening these brackets, and we're saying case, and we're saying case bob, right? Because we have here val equals bob, case bob. Then what we're doing, we're saying answer, we're basically saying this, answer equals Marley, right? And after that we need to, and I'm going to use a tab here so it's more readable, and then we have to break, because we don't want any of the statements after that to be executed. And then we're saying case 42, so we're saying case, so that means if val is 42, so case 42, then again we go on the next line, and we're saying answer equals the answer, right? Answer equals the answer. And what I'm going to do after I say this and I break, I'm going to basically, what I'm doing here, I'm selecting this, and I'm pressing shift option on Mac, but on Windows would be shift alt, and then while you're pressing this, you press the down button, and it basically copies whatever you have selected. And I'm going to copy a few times so I can have basically the template of what I need. So here is saying else if val equals 1, so we're saying case 1, then we're saying answer equals, there is no number 1, right? So I'm copying this and I'm putting in here, right? and here I have a mistake because I have an extra. Okay, so then we're saying else if var is 99, so case 99, then we're saying answer equals Miss B my this much, right? So here, okay, and then we're saying case 7, then we need answer to be 89, right? So I'm removing this. Actually, I need the last one, right? So we're saying case 7, then answer equals this, right? And we're, well, I don't need to save here. And now I have, I'm going to be deleting this because we don't need it anymore. We transform this in a switch statement, right? So this is how it looks. Okay, so let's test this. Where is the test? Run the test, right? And somebody asked me last time to basically kind of explain what this is, and basically these are basically tests that are run to check that all of the things that they ask us to do are correct, right? So chain to switch 1 should be there is no number 1. So if you give here 1, then this would return answer, which answer becomes, when is 1, it becomes there is no number 1. So if you say chain to switch, which is this function of 1, then it would go on this switch with a value of 1, it will see it's 1, and then answer from here would become there is no number 1, and then we're returning it here. So basically it is returning there is no number 1, right? So let's run the tests, and we're passing the test, right? And let me just check if anybody said anything and see if anybody else joined the live. Okay, I see my brother Daniel has joined as well. Hi Daniel, how are you? Thank you for sharing, and I'm glad you can hear it. I hope that Julian also can hear it now. Let me know, Julian, if you're still here and if I can hear it. Also, if you're here and you didn't hit the like button already, I would appreciate if you can do that so that YouTube pushes the content more and more people can see the live. Okay, I will be going back to the course now so that we can actually get something done. So now it's saying returning Boolean values from function, and we have learned about Boolean values, which is true and false in some previous live event in this course, right? So it's saying you may recall from comparison with the equality operator that all comparison operators return a Boolean true or false value. So when we're comparing something like 2 less than 3, where we're saying this expression 2 less than 3 is returning a Boolean value, which is either true or false, depending on if the expression makes sense, if it's true or false, right? So here we're saying sometimes people use an if-else statement to do a comparison like this. Function is equal of a and b, so basically here they're getting 2 arguments, and in the function is saying if a equals b, return true, else return false, right? So basically what it's saying is checking the 2 arguments that you're passing to the function is equal, and then it's checking them if they are equal. And as you can see, it's using the strict equality operator here, which means they need to be the same value and the same type as well. It can be 2 as a number and 2 as a string. They need to be both the same value and the same data type, right? So here we're returning true and here returning false. But there is a better way to do this, because since these 2 things are actually evaluated and I'm going to copy this so I can explain. They explain as well, but I'm going to explain my own way. Basically, what JavaScript does here, I'm going to console log here, and I'm going to use this function is equal, and I'm going to put 2 and 2. Basically, I'm going to pass A as 2 and B as 2, right? And what's happening here is actually JavaScript, when you're using a comparator, like a comparison, like equals or less than equal, it basically evaluates this to a Boolean. So instead of saying if this is equal, return true, else return false, you can just say return, and basically what you're saying A equals B, because this is actually evaluated to true or false. So instead of saying if this is true, return true, else return false, you're just saying return this expression evaluated, because if these are equals, this will evaluate to true, so you're returning true. If they're not equal, it will evaluate to false, and you're returning false, right? So if well, I don't need to clear this. If I am actually running this node Freecodecamp, you can see that we're getting true because I passed here 2 and 2, and if you return 2 equals 2, it's evaluated to true. Now if I pass here 3, 2 equals 2 is equal to 3 will evaluate to false, so it will return false. So if I clear this and I do this, we're getting false, right? So it's exactly what they're saying here. Since the comparison returns true or false, we can return the result of the comparison. So here it's saying fix the function is less to remove the if-else statements. So we're going to their code and see, we need to change what they have. Basically here they use an if with a comparison operator less, and is returning true if A is less than B. So instead of saying that, all that if and else, we can just say return A is less than B, and this will be evaluated to true or false, right? So let's run this and submit and go to the next challenge. I will go through one more, and then I will check to see if there's any questions, because otherwise I have to keep going back and we are not going to do much progress. Okay. So it says return early pattern from functions. When a return statement is reached, the execution of the current function, like when you're in a function and the return word is used and is actually run, then the function just finishes, and anything that is after that return, it won't be executed. So like for example here, you are in this function, you're saying, so I'm going to copy this, right, so I can show it in here. In this function, which is called myFun, you're basically you're saying log to the console hello, and then you're returning world, which means that this function, when run, it will return a world if you actually assign the return of this function to something. But because we have returned something, is basically returning out of the function, and it's not running anything else that is after that, right? And as you can see, even Visual Studio, which is my editor, is basically showing there is a problem here. It's saying unreachable code detected, because Visual Studio Code is marked and it can see some stuff like that. So basically this will never be run because we'll already return from the function. So as you can see, if I'm running this function, I'm going to clear here and say this. You're just getting hello, you're not getting this because we have return. If I move this return after this console log, you can see that Visual Studio can see now that that code is reachable because we have not returned, and then we will get both things. So once you get the return, then nothing after the return will be executed. Okay, so here it says the above outputs hello to the console. The above outputs hello to the console and returns world, but bye is never output because the function exists at the return statement. And here is saying modify the function appTest so that if A or B are less than 0, the function will immediately exit with a value of undefined. Right? So it's saying, hint, remember that undefined is a keyword, not a string. So we don't put it as a string, it's a keyword, right? So here is basically saying, oh, oops, what I did here. Let me go back. Right. So we're going to the code, and what we have to do is, if A or B, any of them, if they are less than 0, then the function will immediately exit with the value of undefined. So what we're saying here basically is returning this stuff, right? But in here we're saying if A is less than 0, right? And then we're using the OR operator, the logical OR operator, which we have learned before, and we're saying OR B is less than 0. So if any of these things are true, then we want to return undefined, which is that keyword, right? So basically what's happening is first checking if any of these are less than 0, and if they are, we're returning undefined, and anything else after will not be run, right? So let's run this, and that's it, right? Let me see if there's any questions or if anybody said anything, and I will go forward. Okay, so there are no questions. If there's anybody new to the live that wasn't here before and you didn't hit the like button already, I would appreciate one, and we will be going forward. Let me know if you have any questions from what we're going through. Okay. So here we're getting basically kind of a problem. So what I'm going to do is like kind of a challenge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this bigger so we can see the problem on this side and the code on this side. So here is saying, in the casino game blackjack, a player can gain advantage over the house by keeping track of the relative number of high and low cards remaining in the deck. This is called card counting. Having more high cards remaining in the deck favors the player. Each card is assigned a value according to the table below. So basically the cards that have the values 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, you're basically adding 1 to the count that you're keeping when you're counting cards. If it's 7, 8 or 9, you're basically not doing nothing. You're adding 0 or you're not doing nothing, right? And if they are these values, then you're basically subtracting 1, right? So he's saying you will write a card counting function. It will receive a card parameter, which can be a number or a string, and increment or decrement the global count variable according to the card's value. See table. The function will then return a string with the current count and the string bet if the count is positive, or hold if the count is 0 or negative. So basically it's saying if the count is positive, we return a string with the current count and the string bet. So basically we're having to return the value of the current count and the string bet if the value of the count is positive. If the count is 0 or negative, we're just returning hold. The current count and the player decision, bet or hold, should be separated by a single space. So we're basically using the number and then bet or hold separated by a space, right? So you're saying do not reset count to 0 when value is 7, 8 or 9. Do not return an array. Do not include quotes, single or double in the output. So let's see, this description is like not exactly good. So let's see, by having more cards. So we're basically getting a card and we have to change the count. This is called count. Okay, so having each card is when a volume. Each can Okay, so it seems there is only one card and we have to change count depending on it, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the switch the switch how is it called, the switch method that we have learned before, and I'm going to say switch, and in the switch I'm going to pass the card, which the card is saying it can be either a string or a number, right? So what I'm going to say, switch, and I'm passing the card which I'm receiving in the function, okay? And then I don't have to do anything for these cases. I don't have to do anything with count for 7, 8, and 9, but I have to do something for these cases. So I'm going to say case, and you remember that we can, because we're doing the same thing for all these, instead of saying case 2 do this, case 3 do this, case 4 do this, we can just say case 2, and I'm going to copy this like this using shift option or shift alt and down arrow, and I'm going to copy it a few times, and I'm going to say case 3, case 4, case 5, and case 6, right? So for all these cases we're just saying count, and we basically have to increase count by 1, so I'm just saying count plus plus, right? And then for these cases I'm just going to copy this. Oh, and remember we have to use a break, and then for these cases let me just do this, and we're saying 10, and then we're using these strings jack, queen, king, and ace, right? For these cases we have to say count minus minus, right? And we're saying break, okay? So now we have changed basically count to whatever we need, and then we say return, and we basically have to make up a string which holds first the count, right? So return count plus, we have to put a space, right? Because we need a space between count and whatever to bet or hold. And then let me do before that let me create a variable, and I'm going to name this one let, because I'm using let, I'm not using var. Like I said before, it's better to use let, and I'm saying let bet or hold, right? And I'm going to make this an empty string, starting an empty string, or maybe just nothing, I'm just declaring it. And then I'm saying if, and I'm saying if count is higher than 0, so it has to be strictly higher, then we're saying bet or hold, we're giving it the value of bet, right? And then we're saying else, which means it's 0 or less, then we're saying else bet or hold equals hold, right? So now if the value is higher than 0, the value of count is higher than 0, we will have in this variable the string bet, else we will have hold. So now we're just returning the count plus a space plus bet or hold, right? Bet or hold, which is a string, one of those two, right? So let's see if we understood correctly what they want and this works properly. Let me remove this. Okay, so let's see. I hope you guys have kept up with what I was explaining here. If not, put some questions in the chat and let's try this. And this works. So do let me know if you have any questions about what we went through. Hi Praveen, welcome to the live. If you didn't give a like already, please give one so more people like you can see the live, because YouTube is going to push it more. Also, if you want to be kept up to be current with the new lives that I'm going to be putting on, you will need to subscribe and hit the notification bell if you are not subscribed already. And I see somebody else join. Hello, welcome to the live and enjoy. Do let me know, guys, if you have any questions. So I will be going forward, and let's make this smaller because I think we're going back to theory now. So now we're saying we're learning how to build JavaScript objects. So we're saying you may have heard the term object before. Objects are similar to arrays, which we have learned already about them in this course, except that instead of using indexes to access and modify their data, you access the data in objects to what are called properties. Objects are useful for storing data in a structured way and can represent real-world objects like a cat. For example, this is how you write an object. You basically have a variable and an object. Instead of having those square brackets, you have this kind of brackets, and then you have properties, and properties also have value. For this property we have this value, for this property we have this value, and so on. And the way you would access the value of whiskers, you have to say cat of name, the way you would use in an array. Like if you had an array cat with elements in it, and you will say cat of 0, cat of 1, and so on. Here, instead of that, you have properties which can be accessed. So you say cat of name, and then the value that is returned from that is whiskers. Cat of legs returns 4, and so on, right? Cat of enemies returns an array with water and dogs, right? In these examples, all the properties are stored as strings such as name, legs, and tails. However, you can also use numbers as properties, so you could have something like 1 here. You can even omit the quotes for single word string properties as follows. So as you can see here, you don't need quotes if it's only one word in the property, right? But if you have a property that has 2 words, like make love, right, you would have to put it between quotes like this. Okay. However, if your object has non-string properties, JavaScript will automatically typecast them as string. So when you have an object that has is like this, const obj, and you put it like this, 1, and you get, let me remove this, and you get here hello, right? You can see that even if I'm saying console log, and here I'm saying object, which is the object, and inside here, instead of say, like, you can see that even if I use this object of 1 and I run this works, but also this works. If I use a string here, it still works, right? Because it's typecast them as string. So you can see that even that is still returning hello, right? You can set these object properties to whatever values you want, as long as name is a string, legs and tails are numbers, and friends is an array. So basically, in what they gave us here, we have an object which is dog, and then we need to basically, let me make this bigger, and we have to declare something like that. So we have the property of name, which, remember, we don't have to use quotes because name has only one word, the property. So we can say something like Grive or whatever dog names you're used to, right? And remember, in objects, after you have the property and you have 2 dots and then you have the value of the property, you have a comma, and then you get the next property, right? And we have then legs, which again we don't need quotes, and we use 4, because we want to be merciful. Then we're saying tails, right, and obviously 1, unless it's some kind of other world dog, right? And then we have enemies, which will be an array, and we can say in this array maybe cat and whatever else. I'm just going to put one element because I can think of anything now, but you can put more elements here. And this, when you use my dog of enemies, you will get basically an array with the enemies of the dog, which at this moment is just an element, which is cat, right? So let's run this. Okay, so he was saying to use friends, not enemies. So I will put that this time the friends are actually the cat. So run the test, and that's it. All right. Thank you for the hello, Ahmad. Welcome to the live. I hope you're enjoying it. If you didn't give a like already, please give a like so that YouTube can push this content more. And if you know of anybody that would be this live would be useful to them and will get some value, do make sure to share the live so that we can create more of a community where people can ask questions and stuff like that. I am planning in the future to also make lives with coding projects live. So I think that will be really interesting. So if you're interested in that and you're not subscribed already, do subscribe and click the notification bell, and YouTube will let you know when I'm setting up more lives. All right. I will be going back to the course now. Do let me know, guys, if you have any questions in the chat. Okay, so it's saying accessing object properties with dot notation. There are two ways to access the properties of an object. Dot notation, which is you're basically using the name of the object, then dot, and then you use the property name. And bracket notation, where you use the name of the object, then you use brackets, and inside the brackets you put the property name, similar to an array. Dot notation is what you use when you know the name of the property you're trying to access ahead of time. Obviously, even if you know it, you can still use bracket notation, right? Here is a sample of using dot notation to read an object property. So you have an object which has property 1, which has the value of val1, and property 2, which has the value of val2. Thank you for the like, it's appreciated. And here you're basically creating a variable and you're giving it the value of whatever value prop1 has. So you're saying my object, which is the name, you use dot and you use the property name, and same here, right? So this is the dot notation of accessing a property through the dot notation, right? So here it says a read in the property values of test object using dot notation. Set the variable hat value equal to the object's property hat, and set the variable shirt value equal to the object's property shirt. So here we're basically using test object, and we have to give to hat value the value of hat, which is bulk up. So what we're saying test object, and we're accessing with dot, and we're saying hat, right? So test object hat, and basically what will be stored in this variable, it will be the value of bulk up, because that's what it is at this location of test object hat, right? And for shirt value, we're using test object dot shirt, and that will be the value of jersey, right? So that's it. So let's run it, and that's it for this one. Now it's showing us accessing object properties with bracket notation, which is the other way of accessing it. So it's saying the second way to access properties of an object is bracket notation. If the property of the object you are trying to access has a space in its name, so something like that, you wouldn't be able to use the dot notation, because if you use dot and then you put the first word, then the second word won't be basically in the same word, and JavaScript will get confused if you're trying to use the dot notation to access properties in an object like that. So what you have to do is you will have to use the bracket notation instead, where in the bracket you put the string with 2 words, right? So if the property of the object you're trying to access has a space in its name, you will need to use bracket notation. However, you can still use bracket notation on object properties without spaces. So even if there are no spaces in the property name, you can still use the bracket notation. Here is a sample of using bracket notation to read an object's property. So you have this object, and the way to access these values from here, you're just saying my object of space name, and that will return I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and so on, right? My object of space, it will return spoke, and so on. Note that property names with spaces in them must be in quotes, single or double, right? So you have to put them in quotes if they are a string, right? Here is saying read the values of the properties an and 3 and the string of test object using bracket notation and assign them to these variables, right? So here we have entry value, and we have to put in entry value whatever value this property name has in the object. So we're saying test object, and we're using bracket notation, and here we're saying an and 3, right? That's correct, I hope. And then here again we're using bracket notation, and we need the value of drink, so we're using here the drink. So let's run this, and that's it for this one. Let me see if there's any questions. No questions for now, so we will be going forward. Thank you for the likes, guys. It is appreciated because that's how YouTube pushes the content more, so more people can see the content and we can basically jump on this course. Okay, let's go forward. Here is saying accessing object properties with variables. So it's saying another use of the bracket notation on object is to access a property which is stored as the value of a variable. This can be very useful for iterating through an object's properties or when accessing a lookup table. Here is an example of using a variable to access a property. So you have an object like this where you have the property Fido, which has the value of math and so on, and then you have a variable which the variable is a string hunter. And the way you access the value of hunter, the value of the property hunter in dogs, you're basically saying var my breed equals dogs, the object, you use property name, and then in there you put my dog, and basically what's going to happen, my dog here will be basically transformed in the value of my dog, so you will basically be accessing dogs of hunter, right? And you will get this value Doberman. So if you say here console log my breed, you will get Doberman, right? Another way you can use this concept is when the property's name is collected dynamically during the program execution as follows. So basically you have var some object, which is some object, and you have prop name John. So this property name has the value of John, and then you have a function which is called prop prefix of string. So let's understand here what they're saying. So you have this object, right? I don't want this to be too confusing, so I'm going to explain it properly, right? So we have this object which has a property which is called prop name and has the value of John. Then we have this function. Let me copy the function. Which this function, when you use on a string, what it does is basically is creating a string inside the function which is called prop, and then what is returning, depending on what you pass to the function, is returning prop plus whatever string you pass. So if you're saying you're calling this function prop prefix with a string of name, right? This, if I console log this, console log, and I'm using this function with the string and I'm passing the string name, it will return prop name, which is exactly what it is here, right? So let me console log this and let's clear, and you can see that we're getting prop name, which is what is here. So you can see that here what they did, they said var some prop. So we're creating here a variable which basically is created dynamically by using a function. So you wouldn't know exactly what this function returns. It's something that is basically going to be stored in here. And then what you want to do is you console log some object of some prop, which is basically created here, and it will be prop and name because you pass name. So if I'm console logging this now, which is some object of prop name, we will get John, right? So if I'm doing this and I'm doing this, we get John, the value of John, because we get some object of prop name. Now you can see here that if I pass here occupation, maybe what it will try to do here in this variable, what we will have, it will be a string which will be prop plus occupation, so it will be prop occupation, right? So now if you're trying to access some object of prop occupation does the property name prop occupation does not exist in this object, so what this will return will be undefined, right? So if I clear this and I do this, it says undefined because it's not defined, it doesn't exist. But now if I put here prop occupation, which we have created here, occupation, right? And I'm saying maybe carpenter, right? Now you will see that we get that value from there. We get carpenter, right? So I hope you understand what's happening in here and how we are using dynamic values to access property names, the value of property names in objects. So here is saying set the player number variable to 16, then use the variable to look up the player's name and assign it to the player. So it's saying we need to say this var player number equals 16, and then we have to find the player that has the number 16. So we're using test object and we're using 16. Now there's one thing to remember, you can also not use the dot notation when you have numbers as property names. You cannot do that, right? That's not going to work, it's going to give you an error. So when you have numbers, just use the bracket notation. So we have that, right? Okay, you should be using the right, so we did it wrong because basically the point of this is to use variables. So we're going to use the variable from here and we're going to put it in here, and this variable actually has a value which is used in here, right? So I was like just going the wrong way about it. Okay, so let's run it, and that's it for this one. I will be getting a 2 minutes break, guys. I will be getting some coffee in the meantime. If you need to do anything, you can do that now. Also, if you need to ask me any questions, do get this opportunity to ask me any question you would like about me or about any other lives or this live in particular. And we will be continuing in 2 minutes with more of this course. Also, if you didn't give a like already, please give a like now so more people can see it. Ibam, how did you find my live? I'm curious. Did it appear as a recommendation on the from other video, or how exactly did you find it? By did you search for something in particular? And thank you for the like if that was you. If not, thank you whoever did it. It does help to push this content to more people. Are you following along, guys? Let me know if you are following along or if any problems have arisen. Hello, welcome to the live. If you're new, we are taking a break of 2 minutes in which people can ask questions, so do stick along if you would like to watch the live. That's good to know. Ibam. Is there anything you are having a problem with, or is something that we were talking about here? Did it answer your question? By the way, guys, I just wanted to mention that I am doing another live tomorrow at the same time as I started today, which is 5 p.m. in UK London time. So if you want to watch more of this content, you can join me tomorrow as well. You can, if you're not subscribed already, you can subscribe and click the notification bell so that YouTube can show you a notification when I'm going live or when I'm setting up a new live. Abound with the deep copy, I think you need to use something else. This is still basic what we're doing here. I mean, I could probably try to answer a little bit at the end, but let me check something. I mean, obviously, this is the point. One of the best skills of a developer is like Googling, right? And I think deep copy, I mean, there's different ways of doing it. I'm not sure if JavaScript has something now for doing that, but I usually Google how to deep copy an object JavaScript. I think I can't. So here deep copy in AS6 and using. So what I did at some point is basically made a recursive function to deep copy. But look, for example, you could use a library like Lodash, which has a clone deep method, or you can basically do a map and do that. Here is saying no deep copy, but here this is what I used to use for a deep copy. You're basically doing JSON parse, and then you're saying JSON stringify on all object, and basically what is doing here is basically stringifying the object, making it a string, and then you're parsing it. So basically it's losing the reference to the old object, so that way it's not related to that old object anymore. So basically you're stringifying it and then you're destringifying it, and that makes a copy, if that makes sense. Alright, so I'm going to be going back to the live now. If you're new here, do give a like, I appreciate that, and let's go forward. So here it's saying updating object properties. After you've created a JavaScript object, you can update its properties at any time, just like you would update any other variable. You can use either dot or bracket notation to update. For example, let's look at our dog, which is an object. So before going here, I'm going to explain how you're doing this usually in my words, and then we can read what they have to say. So at this point you have this object and the value of the property name is camper. If you want to change the value of name to another name, like my name, like Marian, what you would say, you would change it like any other variable. For example, if you have a variable, let name equals Sylvie, right? And then you want to change that value to Marian, you just say name and you assign the new value like that. Okay, so is this I think this is name is deprecate. So I think name is a reserved word, so let's use something that's not a reversed word in JavaScript, so like my name. So that's how you would change it, like a normal variable. And thank you for the like, it's appreciated. So this is the same how you would change the value of a property. You just access that you just access that property in the object and you change its value. So if you want to change the value of name to Marian, you just say our dog and I'm basically making me a dog by saying that, right? Our dog of name, right? And you give it the value of Marian. And now you can see that if I actually console log this entire object, well, I need to console log our dog, and I clear this and I run, you can see that now the value of name is Marian because I changed it here, right? So here they're saying, since he's a particularly happy dog, let's change his name to Happy Camper. So they're just saying here Happy Camper, right? So that's how you change the name, right? Here's how we update his object property, our dog name, and they use here dot notation. I use bracket. You can use either depending of whatever the property name has more than one word. So they're saying our dog name equals Happy Camper, or our dog name equals Happy Camper. Now when we evaluate our dog name, so when we are accessing this, instead of getting Camper, which is the first one that it was there, we'll get his new name, Happy Camper. So here they're saying update the my dog object's name property. Let's change her name from Coder to Happy Coder. You can use either dot or bracket notation. So let's go to the code and we have to change this to Happy Coder, right? So what we're saying my dog, and because it's only one word, we can use dot notation. So we're saying my dog name and we're giving it the value of Happy Coder, right? So let's run this and go forward. Now before I'm going to this one, I want to see, okay, we can go forward because nobody else has said anything. Okay, here, how do we add new properties to a JavaScript object? So basically, this object, we created it like this, but we want to add maybe a new property inside, which has like, and you want to add them dynamically. You don't want to, because in JavaScript you don't want to, if you want to create a new property at some point, you can just go always in the code and okay, I put a property here. You have to basically add it at some point. So that's how we need to know how you add a new property at some point in your program, not exactly when you create the object, right? So if you want to do a property of enemies with a value of another array, right, we have to be able to create it dynamically, not to go in there and change it, because we have to create it at some point later on, right? So the way we do it, I will show here, and then we can read what they say. The way you do it exactly the same as you assign a new value to a property that already exists. So the way we assign a new value to our dog of name and we gave it Happy Camper, here we can just say our dog of enemies, and enemies does not exist already, but basically what's happening, you are creating it now, right? So we're saying the property of enemies, we're giving it a value of cat, right? which is an array with cat inside, right? So now if I console log our dog and run this, you can see that we get an property of enemies with cat. So basically the same way as you would be changing a property that exists, the value of a property, that's the same way you add a property with its value, right? So here they say here's how we would add a bark property to our dog. Our dog bark, and they use the dot notation, equals bow wow, or our dog bark equals bow wow. Now when we evaluate our dog bark, we will get his bark, bow wow wow. I'm getting like a twisted tongue now. So basically that's how you add a new property, right? So they're saying add a bark property to my dog and set it to a dog sound such as woof. You may use either dot or bracket notation. So here we have to use to add a bark property, right? So we're saying my dog bark, and we will say equals woof, right? And that's it for this one. Let's do one more and then I will check if there's any questions. You can also delete properties from objects like this. So what happens if you want to remove a property at some point dynamically? You're just saying delete, you use this keyword delete, and after that you pass the object and then the property that you want to delete from that object. So you're just saying if you want to delete bark, you're saying delete our dog bark. So you're just deleting that property with its value from the object. So if you have this object like this and you say delete our dog bark, is deleting this, and then you will have just this part in the object, right? So he's saying you will just have this after you deleting that property, right? So they're saying delete the tails property from my dog. You may use either dot or bracket notation. So going here, they want us to delete tails, but not like this. They want us dynamically, right? So we're saying the keyword delete, and we're saying my dog tails, right? And we run it. Okay, just gonna get some coffee and let's see if there are, sorry about that, if there are any questions. No questions at the moment. I'm seeing there's somebody new to the live. Please, if you didn't give a like already, and I know I'm repeating this, but the likes help for YouTube to push the content more, and more people like you can see it, and we can create a community where we're studying together. So if you didn't give a like already, I would appreciate one. And because there are no questions, I will be going forward now. Okay, so let me clear this here so we can have some free space. And now they're saying using objects for lookups. Objects can be thought as of key value storage, like a dictionary, where you have a word, which is the property, and then you have a description, which is the value of that word or the description, right? If you have tabular data, you can use an object to look up values rather than a switch statement or an if-else chain. This is most useful when you know that your input data is limited to a certain range. So here is an example of a simple reverse alphabet lookup. So here it's simple reverse alphabet lookup. So you have 1 and you get Z, 2, Y, 3, X, and so on until A. So then you get, if you access alpha of 2, you get Y, which basically this is a reverse lookup. So if you're using alpha of 2, you're immediately getting the second to last letter in the alphabet, right? You can also put the value, this can also be dynamic, right? So if you have a value which you want to look up, so the second or the third from the end, you can have it in a variable, and then you just access alpha of the value, and you get y, right? So here is saying convert, and we get a nice exercise here. Convert the switch statement into an object called lookup. Use it to look up val and assign the associated string to the result variable, right? So here you can see we have like a big switch, and you will see how objects are really useful in this case. I will leave this here, and what I will do is they're saying create an object called lookup. So I'm going to create the object called lookup, const lookup, and in here what I'm going to do is I'm going to create these properties. One property will be alpha, which is this, and I will give it the value of Adams, right, like this. Then I have Bravo, and I give it the value of Boston. Then Charlie, and I give it Chicago, right? Then Delta, and Denver. As you can see, I'm getting exactly whatever I'm giving to the result in case of val is delta, I'm giving it here this value, right? So then we got echo, which we're giving a value of easy, and then we have foxtrot. Fox, is this not right? Foxtrot is not recognizing the word, or maybe I don't know. Frank, right? So we have created this object with this value, and now the only thing we have to say is we're saying result equals lookup. So we're using the lookup object of value, because here if value is alpha, we give result Adams. So here if value is alpha, we get lookup of alpha, and we're getting Adams, and that's what ends up in the results. If the value is Bravo, so if val is Bravo, then we're getting lookup of Bravo, and we're getting Boston in result, like we're getting here, result equals to Boston. So you can see how this is so big, but it can be changed just for lookup of val, right? And here we're getting this because I forgot a comma. Remember the commas, right? So now if I run this, that's it for this one. I will give a minute to see if you guys have any questions, because if you're new, you might have some questions about this one, and then we will continue. We will be going for 20 minutes more in today's live, and after that, if you guys want to join me tomorrow, I'll be happy if you can join, and to let other people know about the live if you think they will find it useful. All right. I'm impressed about today. There's actually 9 people watching. This is most that I ever had watching at the same time. Well, actually I had 11, but not for such a long time. So I'm glad people find this useful. Hey Julian, if you're still here, do give a shout in the chat, because I'm wondering if you managed to fix the sound issue. Okay, so there's no questions as of yet, so I will be going forward. So here they're saying testing objects for properties, which means we want to see if a property actually exists in an object that we have. So he's saying sometimes it is useful to check if the property of a given object exists or not. We can use has on property of that property name method. So basically we're using the object name, and then we're using the method on it has on property, and then we're passing a property name, which basically check if that properties exist in the object that we call the method on. So here, if I'm saying console log our dog, which is this object, and then I'm using the method has on property, and then I'm passing name. We should get back true in the console log, because this should look in our dog. This method should look in our dog, see that the property exists, and it should return true from my knowledge. So let's do this, and we get true. But if we're looking for a property called cat, maybe we should get false, because we don't have that property in this object, right? And we get false, right? So you can see it gives example. It's saying here, if that object has the given property name, it returns true, or false if the property is found. If not, is not found, right? So we have this object like this. My object has on property of top, will return true because we have this property here. But if we use middle, we check for middle, we get false because we don't have any middle property here. Here is saying modify the function check object to test if an object passed to the function obj contains a specific property, check prop. If the property is found, return that property's value. If not, return not found. So basically, let's make this bigger. And what we have to do is, we're saying an if here. So we're saying if the object that we are passed, so if object has on property, which we have just learned, has on property, and it has to have this property, so we check for this property, check prop, which is a property. So if it has it, then we want to return the value of this property in the object. So we're returning object of check property. So we're returning the value of that property in the object. And then here is saying change me. So here we're saying if this is not returned here, which means it does not exist, then we return what they say, not found, right? Okay, so let's run this, and that's it for this one. So let's do the next. Now here they're saying, let me switch this, manipulating complex objects. Sometimes you may want to store data in a flexible data structure. A JavaScript object is one way to handle flexible data. They allow for arbitrary combinations of strings, numbers, Boolean, arrays, functions. Like in an object, you can have a lot of different data types in there, right? So here's an example of a complex data structure. Even an array, you have an array. So you see it's an array, and this array has an object inside. This object has some properties, which properties value is a string, the properties value is a string, this properties value is a number, this property value is another array, right? Which the array has some string elements, and then you have another property in these objects from the array, which has a Boolean value, which is true, right? So he's saying this is an array which contains one object inside. The object has various pieces of metadata about an album. It also has a nested formats array. If you want to add more album records, you can do this by adding records to the top level array, right? So basically, if we have this in here and we want to add more records, right, which more records would be more objects like this, you would basically say something like our music, which is an array, and you want to push another record. So you would say push, and in here you would pass an object which would have some other values depending on what that record has, right? If you would want to change maybe the formats in this one record, then the way you would do that in this case would be basically you would go our music, you would access the first element, which we remember that indexes in JavaScript start with 0. So to access the first one, so this object, we will say our music of 0, and then we have to go, once we use our music of 0, we basically have the value of this object, and then we want to access the formats in there, so we basically using formats. So now basically what we have accessed here is this one particular array, because this is the value of formats in the object. If I console log this, console log what we have accessed here, you can see that array, right? So you can see this array from here, right? And if we want to change one more value here, and we will just make up a silly value, we can say we can use this array. This is basically like an address of the array. So we have this array here, and we can push another value, which push, you remember, pushes a value at the bottom, at the end of the array. So we're saying push, and I will just say maybe DVD, right? So I'm pushing DVD, which means this in this array, in this object, in this array, then we're basically adding at the end the value of DVD. So now if we're accessing it here and we console log it, you can see that it's in there now, right? We have DVD at the end. If we use unshift, which is a method on arrays to put elements at the beginning of the array, then you would get this DVD at the beginning of this array instead, right? So you can see DVD is here now. And if we actually console log the whole our music object, you can see the structure as it is changed after we added this DVD here, right? So let me clear this and make this bigger so there's more space, and run it, and you can see now the new structure is the same as it is here, only you have DVD as well here because we have added it, right? Okay, so let's see what they say. What else they say? If you want to add more album records, you can do this by adding records to the top level array. So that's what we said. If you want to add more records, you just push in this array. Objects hold data in a property which has a key value format, which we have just talked about. In the example above, artist, Daft Punk, is a property that has a key of artist and the value of Daft Punk. JavaScript object notation, or JSON, is a related data interchange format used to store data. And the way that works, you always have to have these quotes when you're using property names. You see? You have quotes even on the property names, even if they don't need to have, right? So here is saying you will need to place a comma after every object in the array unless it's the last object in the array. So basically, yeah, so basically if you have in this array more objects, you need to place a comma, because basically you need the comma between elements in an array. We already learned about that, right? So here is saying add a new album to the my music array, add artist and title strings, release year number, and the formats array of strings. So I'm going to make this bigger, and they say to add one more, and here is saying, so I need to put a comma, right? And I need to add one more record, and what they want us to put in this one record is the artist, which I will just say Jojo, right? Or title, which I will say Trumpet Man, right? Release year, which I will just say 2000, and format array of strings. We don't need this one, they don't ask us for this, right? So here I will just say I just want DVD, right? So if I run this, we basically just Okay, let's see what the problem is. They say format should be an array of string with at least 2 elements. So they want one more element here. They want just one element in this array. So let's put here CD and DVD. Let's run the tests, and this works. Let me see if there's any questions from people. No questions at the moment, but people are still watching, which means they are following. So 10 minutes more and we will close this live. I will actually leave the 5 minutes so people can ask me questions if they have any, and if you have any suggestions for the next lives or any suggestions about what I can improve, do let me know. Okay, so here is saying accessing nested, oops, sorry about that, that shouldn't have happened. Let me take this, and it's saying accessing nested objects. The sub-properties of objects can be accessed by chaining together the dot or bracket notation, like I showed in here, our music 0, formats, and so on, right? Let me clear this so I can have some space. So, okay, so it's saying here's a nested object, and let me copy this here. Okay, here is a nested object where basically you have an object, and inside the object you have a property of desk, which is another object which has a property of drawer, which so basically the value of the property desk in this big object is actually another object, and that object also has a property of drawer which has a value of stapler. Then this big object also has a property called cabinet, which has as a value another object, right? And like this big object, right? So this cabinet is value in this object is actually this big object, and this big object has two properties. One is a top drawer and one a bottom drawer. The bottom drawer just has a value of soda, and the top drawer has a value which is another object. So it's basically three objects deep within each other, which this object has two properties, folder 1 and folder 2, with the value of a file and secrets. So basically, if you're using our storage and then you chain cabinet, so you're basically going in this object of cabinet, and then you're accessing top drawer is basically our storage cabinet, and then you're going in top drawer and you're going in folder 2. So the value obviously will be secrets. So you're basically just chaining this and getting the last value. Our storage and then desk, you're going into this object, and then you're saying drawer has a value of stapler, right? So they ask us access the my storage object and assign the contents of the glove box property to the glove box contents variable. Use dot notation for all properties where possible, otherwise use bracket notation. So in this var glove box contents, we need to put the contents of glove box, right? So what I will do is I will say, starting with my storage, and they say use a dot notation where possible, and here I can use dot notation because it's only one word. So I'm saying car, then because I need to get to this glove box, I need to go inside the car, so I'm saying dot inside, and then I need to go inside the glove box and get the value of that, right? And because glove box is actually two words, I will need to use brackets, so I'm saying here brackets and glove box, and this should be it, right? So let's run this, and that's it for now. So basically I think this is where we're gonna stop today with this course. I think tomorrow hopefully we will finish the first module of basic JavaScript from this course. There are 6, 7 or 8 more modules, so we will be going for some time. We will be learning a lot of things. So if you can join me tomorrow as well. If not, the lives are the lives are recorded on YouTube, so you can watch on your own time. Also, if you know anybody that would enjoy this kind of content and it will be helped by it, don't hesitate to share. And also, if you didn't give a like already, I would appreciate one if you enjoyed this live. Okay, so now if you have any questions, I will be taking any questions that you have. If you don't have any questions, I don't expect you to stay. Say bye if you want, and I hope to see you tomorrow and in the next lives. Thank you for the like, I appreciate it. Hope to see you tomorrow or on any of the next lives. Do subscribe if you're not subscribed already, if you want YouTube to let you know about my next lives when I'm scheduling them. Thank you for watching. I'm glad you have found these lives and that you find them helpful. Have a great evening, Daniel. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and see you next time. Bye, Roxana. Have a nice evening. See you tomorrow. If you're new here, we are closing the lives now. We are closing the live now, so we are doing another one tomorrow at 5 p.m. UK London time. So if you didn't manage to join this one, you can join the one tomorrow, and hope to see you there. Alright, thank you guys for joining. I will see you tomorrow if you can join, otherwise I will see you in one of the next live. For all of you, have a great day, evening or night, wherever you are, and God bless you. Bye bye.